The silver grass at the edge of the Valewood moved before the wind did. Ryan noticed it the way he noticed most things, quietly, without making a fuss about it. He was sitting on the low wooden step outside his field station, holding a cup of water gone lukewarm, watching the forest the way he always did at dawn. The colony of Ardenmoor was still asleep behind him. The trees ahead were enormous and old, the kind of old that made a man feel politely small. The grass moved again. He did not stand. He did not reach for his recorder. He just watched. A small head pushed through the stalks. Round, scaled in amber and gold, the colors shifting like sunlight trapped in honey. Two eyes, wide and bright, and terribly alert, fixed on him without blinking. A baby dragon. Ryan had been on Silvara for 2 years. He had seen adult Dravery from a distance, great winged shapes moving between the treetops, occasionally visible at the treeline, never close. The colony had a formal agreement with the Dravery Elder Council. Humans stayed west of the Valewood boundary. Dragons stayed east. It was peaceful. It was distant. It worked. No one had mentioned the juveniles. He sat very still. The small dragon, she was no bigger than a large dog, inched forward through the grass on her 4 legs, wings folded tight against her back, eyes never leaving his face. She moved with enormous caution, the kind that looked almost comic on something so young. One careful paw, a pause, another paw, a longer pause. Ryan breathed slowly and did not move. She reached the edge of the grass and stopped. About 4 meters of open ground sat between them. She studied him. He studied her. The dawn light caught the scales along her neck and turned them briefly copper. Then she sat down, just sat, and kept watching him. He finished his water. He went inside, filed his morning notes, made a second cup of water because the heating unit was broken again, and came back out. She was still there. Same spot. Same expression, if expression was even the right word for whatever a dragon face could hold. Focused. Patient. Deciding something. He went about his work. Checked the soil sensors at the North Post. Logged overnight temperature readings. Sat back down on the step to review them. She watched every single thing he did. After about an hour, she got up and walked back into the grass and disappeared. Ryan looked at the empty treeline for a moment. He filed it under. Unusual wildlife encounter. Possible juvenile exploration behavior. Low priority. He was wrong on every count except the first. She came back the next morning. Same time, same spot, same patient watching. He was almost expecting her. He did not know what to do with that feeling, so he ignored it and went about his routine. She seemed satisfied with this. She sat. She watched. She left. By the 4th morning, Ren had noticed. Ren was Ryan's field partner, younger by about a decade, and constitutionally incapable of leaving anything alone. He stood behind the station door and peered through the narrow window with barely contained delight. "She's back," he whispered. "I can see that," Ryan said. "She's looking at you like you owe her something. She's a juvenile Dravery exhibiting curious behavior near a colony structure. It is not that unusual." "You've said that 4 times now," Ren said. "For 4 days." Ryan did not answer. He had reported it to Director Orrin on day 2, technically. She had reminded him that juvenile Dravery contact was a regulated matter under the Colonial Dravery Coexistence Charter and that he should document everything carefully. She had not told him to make the dragon leave. He chose not to think about why that felt like something important. On the 5th morning it rained, and the small dragon sat in the rain and watched him work inside through the window. She did not seem bothered by the wet. She seemed very comfortable with patience. On the 6th morning, Ren set out a small chunk of dried fruit about 2 meters from the step, curious whether she would take it. She walked over, sniffed it with tremendous thoroughness, and then walked away and sat back down in her spot and looked at Ryan. "She only cares about you," Ren said, sounding personally offended. Ryan said nothing. He was thinking about the way she sat, very upright, very deliberate, with a quality that he could only describe as intention. She was not wandering. She was not bored. She came here, to this specific place, and she watched this specific man, and then she left, and then she came back. On the 7th morning the sky was pink and still. She came through the grass as always, sat in her spot as always, and watched him as always. He drank his water. He wrote his notes. He looked up. She was walking toward him. Slow, direct, right up to the step where his boots rested. She lowered her head and sniffed his left boot with deep concentration, the way something tries to memorize a thing it expects to need later. Then she straightened up. She looked at him one more time. Then she turned, picked something up from the ground, a river stone, smooth and pale, that he had not seen her carrying, and set it down carefully at his feet. She looked at him. He looked at the stone. He picked it up. She spread her wings and was gone over the treeline before he could think of anything useful to say. He held the stone in his palm. It was warm from her grip. He did not file it as a wildlife encounter. He did not file it as anything. He just set it on the windowsill inside and looked at it for a while before starting his day. The stone sat on the windowsill for 3 days before Ryan moved it. He did not move it far. He placed it on his desk next to his field recorder, in a small clear space he had unconsciously kept empty. He told himself it was just a rock. He told himself this several times over the 3 days, which should have been a sign that he was not entirely convinced. She brought another one the following morning. This stone was darker, slightly oval, with a faint stripe of white running through its center. She set it at his feet in the same deliberate way, placed, not dropped, and then sat back and watched him pick it up. When he did, she made a very small sound, low in her throat, and turned and left. Wren had started keeping a log. Not officially, just a small handwritten list tacked to the inside of the station door. Ryan pretended he had not noticed it. Day 9, stone, dark oval, white stripe. Day 11, bent metal clasp, origin unclear. Day 13, seed pod, large, sealed. Day 15, piece of shed claw, small, clean-edged. Day 18, bark, carved. The bark stopped him. It was a piece no bigger than his palm, and on the inner face someone had made a pattern. Not random scraping. A deliberate pattern, curved lines, a central shape that might have been a figure or might have been a symbol, surrounded by smaller marks that repeated at even intervals. He photographed it from 6 angles and sent the images to the Xenobiology archive at the main colony hub with a note asking if anyone recognized the style. Nobody did. He tried, on day 12, to bring her something in return. He had thought about it more than he was comfortable admitting. He settled on a piece of orange from the canteen, bright and fragrant. He held it out when she arrived. She sniffed it. She sniffed it for a long time, very seriously, moving her nose around every side of it. Then she stepped back and sat down and looked at him. He ate the orange. She seemed satisfied with this outcome for reasons he could not determine. He tried again on day 16. Something shiny, a small piece of polished alloy he had found in the equipment room, no longer useful for anything. She accepted this one. She took it carefully from his hand, held it for a moment, then walked to the base of the tree nearest the station, a broad-trunked thing with roots that broke the surface of the ground in great curving arcs, and buried it. Pressed the soil back smooth with one small paw, looked at the spot for a moment, then walked back and sat with him as if nothing had happened. Wren updated the log. Day 16, Ryan tried to give her something shiny. She buried it. Classic. She buried mine, Ryan said later that evening, not looking up from his notes. I know, Wren said. What does that mean? I don't know. I think it means she's keeping it safe. Ryan considered this. Or it means she doesn't want it near her, and burying it is polite rejection. Either way, Wren said cheerfully. That's more cultural nuance than any human-Dravery interaction in the last 30 years. That was, unfortunately, true. Director Oren called Ryan into her office on day 20. She was not angry. She was something more careful than angry, the expression of a person who sees something she does not have a policy for. The Elder Council has not objected, she said. I checked. I sent a formal inquiry through the liaison protocol and received a response in about 6 hours, which is faster than they have ever responded to anything. She paused. The response said, observed. Just that one word. Just that one word. She folded her hands on her desk. I don't know what to do with this, Ryan. The charter doesn't cover this scenario. Document everything. Do not initiate contact. Do not name her. He almost said I haven't. He stopped himself because it would have been a small lie. He had not named her out loud. But in his notes, she had stopped being the juvenile and started being the small one, and he knew that was not nothing. Do not name her. He understood why. Naming was claiming, and no human had any claim on a Dravery child. Back at the station, he sat on the step in the early evening light, and looked at the small collection on his windowsill. 2 stones, a seed pod, a claw fragment, the carved bark. He had thought about the pattern on the bark for days now. The central figure, the repeating marks. There was something about the spacing, even careful, that reminded him of the way she placed things at his feet. Not random, not careless. Every object placed with thought. She arrived the next morning carrying nothing. He noticed the absence immediately. She came to her usual spot, sat, and watched him with those wide amber eyes. No gift. He waited. She waited. He went about his routine. She tracked every movement with quiet attention. Near midday, she did something new. She watched him speak. Not the words. She could not understand his words. She watched his mouth. The shape of it when he talked to Ren over the comm unit. The way it moved when he read aloud from a field guide out of habit. She watched with the focused, still quality of a creature trying to memorize something important. He noticed and fell quiet. She kept watching his face. He did not know what she was looking for. He did not know that she had already found it. He did not know that the watching and the bringing and the burying had a name in a language he had never heard spoken, and that she was most of the way through something that could not be undone. He just sat on his step in the afternoon warmth and let her look. It seemed like the least he could do. She started copying him on a Tuesday. Not his words. She had no interest in his words. What she copied was everything underneath the words. The rhythm of the way he exhaled before writing something down. The low distracted hum he made when he was working through a problem. The specific sound of his breathing when he was at rest versus when he was concentrating. She studied these things the way a student studies a text, and then she reproduced them with an accuracy that was, frankly, unsettling. Ren filmed it on day 31 and could barely hold the recorder steady for laughing. The clips circulated through the station by that afternoon. People gathered in the common room to watch a small amber gold dragon sitting beside a completely oblivious xenobiologist, mimicking his habits with the straight-faced sincerity of a creature that did not understand why this was funny. She hummed when he hummed. She went still when he went still. When he sighed and stretched and rolled his shoulders, she stretched her own small wings in almost the same motion. She thinks she's a person, someone said. She thinks she's him, someone else said. Ryan watched the clip once, alone, after everyone else had gone to bed. He did not laugh. He watched it 3 times and thought about it for a long time. The next morning he tried something. When she arrived and settled into her spot, he waited until she was calm and then made a sound, low and resonant, from the chest. The particular sound she made when she was content and sitting close to him. A kind of soft drone, steady and warm. She went completely still. He held the sound for a few seconds and let it fade. She stared at him. Something moved in those amber eyes, not quite surprise. More like a door opening. She made the sound. He echoed it. She made it again, slightly differently. A small change in the end of it, a shift in tone. He echoed that too, as best he could with a human throat. They did this for 20 minutes. Back and forth, slow and careful, like 2 people exchanging words in a language neither of them fully spoke. He did not know what he was saying. He would understand that part later. What he knew in the moment was that she was engaged in a way she had not been before, not watchful, not patient, but genuinely responsive, present in a new way. After a while she stopped and looked at him with an expression he had started to think of as settled. The look she got when something had gone the way she wanted it to go. He went back inside and sat at his desk and wrote in his personal notes, not the official log. She is not playing. I don't know what she is doing, but it is not playing. He went into the xenobiology archive that evening and searched more carefully than he had before. He had been searching for Dravery juvenile behavior. This time he searched for Dravery bonding behavior, and then Dravery communication, and then Dravery ritual, and found almost nothing. 30 years of human presence on Silvara 4, and the archive had 4 papers on Dravery culture, all of them vague. All of them noting that the Elder Council declined to provide specific information about internal customs. One entry, a field note from a researcher named Solis, 42 years ago, flagged as incomplete and never followed up, read. Observed juvenile Dravery engaging in repeated gift deposition near root systems of large trees. Objects included stone, organic matter, and 1 worked item of unclear origin. Juvenile appeared to be selecting objects deliberately over a period of weeks. Attempted to ask Elder Council about significance. Elder Council declined to comment. And then, At the bottom, a handwritten edition that someone had scanned in later. Note from later review. The buried name is not given. It is grown. He read that line 5 times. He did not know what it meant. He knew it was important. In the morning, she did not come at her usual time. He waited on the step longer than normal, watching the grass. Nothing. She arrived at midday instead, and she was not alone. Another juvenile followed at a distance, smaller, green-scaled, nervous, who stopped at the tree-line and refused to come further. The amber gold dragon, his small one, looked back at the green one, then looked at Ryan, then back at the green one. A long pause. The green dragon made a small sound. She answered it with something short and firm and turned back to Ryan as if the matter was handled. The green one sat down at the tree-line and watched from there. She walked up to the step, and then she did something she had never done before. She pressed her snout against the back of his hand. Not a sniff, a press. Deliberate and still, like a held breath, like a signature. She held it there for a moment that felt longer than it was. Then she made a sound. Quiet. Close to his skin. Not the resonant chest sound of their exchanges. Something different. Something softer. A single syllable, shaped carefully, the way someone says a word they mean. He could almost hear it. Almost. She pulled back. Looked at him. Satisfied again. Deeply satisfied. In the way she only looked when something had completed itself. The green dragon at the tree-line made a sound that, if Ryan had been able to read it, was the Dravery equivalent of "I told you so." He sat very still on his step and turned his hand over and looked at the back of it, as if the answer might be written there. It wasn't, but something had been said. He was sure of that now. He was less sure he was ready for what it meant. The elder dragon came out of the Valewood on a morning with no wind. Ryan was at the north sensor post, 60 meters from the station, when the tree line seemed to shift. At first he thought it was a cloud shadow. Then he understood that what he was seeing was something very large, moving between the trunks with a slowness that was not slowness at all but precision. Every step placed, every movement chosen. He stood still. The elder cleared the tree line and stopped. He was enormous. Ocean blue and deep gold. The colors so old they had gone somewhat dull at the edges, like paint that had witnessed too many years of sun. His scales were worn smooth on his chest and along his flanks, not damaged, just ancient. One of his horns had a clean break near the tip, grown over long ago. His wings were folded so close they barely showed. He looked at Ryan the way a mountain looks at something, without particular hurry, without any doubt about which one of them was older. Ryan's comm unit buzzed. Director Oren's voice, tightly controlled. Ryan, there is a Dravery elder at the station perimeter. Do not approach. We are activating the liaison protocol. Stay where you are. He stayed where he was. The elder looked at him for a long time. Not aggressively. Not warmly. The way someone looks at a problem they have been considering for some time and have not yet decided about. Ryan's heart was doing something uncomfortable in his chest, but his hands were steady. He had not built a career in field xenobiology by panicking at unfamiliar animals. Though he was fairly certain nothing in his career had been quite this unfamiliar. He thought about what he had. Not the translator. The standard colonial translator could handle basic Dravery formal register, but had a poor record with anything nuanced. Not his recorder. Not anything useful. He had the sound. He did not think about it long. He simply did it. He drew a breath and made the low, resonant sound from the chest, the greeting, or what he had always guessed was a greeting, the one she had taught him through 30-some mornings of patient exchange. The elder's eyes changed. It was not a dramatic change. A human watching might have missed it. But Ryan had spent months learning to read a young dragon's face, and he saw the shift in the elder's expression as clearly as a spoken word. Something moved behind those ancient eyes, recognition, and beneath that, something that took a moment to identify. It was surprise. The elder was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, not in the colonial language, in the Dravery tongue, low and measured, each syllable carrying weight. The translator in Ryan's earpiece strained and produced broken fragments, syllables that did not connect. Then it caught up and rendered the sentence whole, in flat mechanical tones that did no justice to the sound. You heard her. Most do not hear her. Ryan said, carefully, she's been patient with me. The translator managed that in the other direction. The elder listened and made no expression Ryan could read. What was she saying? Ryan asked. When we exchanged sounds. I don't know what I was answering. The elder looked at him for a long time before speaking. She was not saying, the translator rendered. She was asking, and you answered. What did I answer? The elder turned his great head slightly. Not away, just a small movement, the kind that meant a thing was being weighed. Correctly, the translator said. Then the elder turned and walked back into the Valewood. He did not look back. He simply went, and the trees swallowed him, and the morning was quiet again as if nothing had happened at all. Ryan stood at the censor post for a while. Director Oren's voice came back. Are you all right? Yes, he said. What did he say? He thought about how to explain it. I think I passed a test I didn't know I was taking. He went back to the station. Ren was standing in the doorway looking pale. There was an elder dragon, Ren said, as if Ryan might have missed this. Standing right there. I know. What did you do? Made a sound at him. Ren stared at him, and he seemed to think that was acceptable. He went inside and sat at his desk and looked at the carved bark on the windowsill. He looked at the smooth river stone, the first one, the one that had started all of this. Then he got up and walked outside to the broad trunk tree near the station, the one she had buried the shiny alloy piece beneath, the one she always came back to, the one she sat beside when she was not sitting with him. He crouched near the base of it, where the roots curved up from the soil. She was already there. He had not heard her arrive. She was sitting against the root with her wings folded and her eyes on him, and she looked the way she always looked when things had gone the way she wanted. He sat down on the ground in front of her. Close. He asked her, plainly, in his own language, knowing she could not understand the words. What did I answer? She looked at him. Then she made a sound. It was not the resonant chest drone of their exchanges. It was the soft sound from before, the one she had pressed into the back of his hand. One syllable, shaped with care. But this time, sitting close in the quiet morning, he heard it properly. It was not a dragon sound. She had shaped her throat into something else. Something borrowed. It was his name. Or close enough to his name that his body reacted before his mind did. A sudden stillness, a caught breath, the particular silence of a person who has just understood something large. She held his gaze, patient, sure of herself in the way she had always been sure of herself. He sat on the ground beside the old tree and did not speak for a long time. 3 nights after the elder came, the field sensor woke Ryan at the 2nd hour past midnight. Not an alarm, the motion setting, the one he used to track nocturnal wildlife near the station perimeter. A quiet pulse on his wrist unit. He lay still for a moment, listening to the dark. The colony behind him was quiet. The Valewood ahead was the kind of silent that forests hold when nothing is wrong. He got up anyway. The sensor placed the movement at the broad trunk tree. He went to the window first rather than the door, some instinct in him preferring to look before being seen. She was already there, digging. Not frantically. She was not disturbed or hurrying. She dug the way she brought him stones. With care. With a kind of focused seriousness that made the whole thing feel formal. Her small claws turned the dark soil in a precise circle, going deeper in a measured way, and she paused between each pass to consider the whole, the way a person rereads a sentence to check it is right. Ryan stood at the window and watched. He did not go outside. Not yet. Something told him that going outside right now would be the wrong kind of interrupting, the way speaking during a held note breaks the music. He watched through the glass and breathed quietly. When the hole was deep enough, she seemed to know the depth by some internal measure. She stopped. She sat back. She looked down into it. Then she did something he had not seen before. She lowered her head to her own chest and held very still. A long moment passed. He thought at first she had fallen asleep, which made no sense. Then she lifted her head again, and in her mouth, held with extraordinary gentleness, was an object. Small, pale, semi-translucent, formed into a smooth, oval shape, the size of 2 fingers pressed together. It caught the moonlight faintly. It had a soft internal quality, not quite glowing, but present, like something with warmth inside it. He had not seen her carry that in. She had made it. He understood this with a certainty he could not explain. She had made it inside herself, over time, the way some creatures build things slowly in the dark where no one watches, and tonight was when it was finished. She set it into the hole. She looked at it for a moment. Then she covered it. Soil back in, smooth and careful, hacked gently with her paw until the surface was flat and even. When it was done, she pressed her forehead to the ground over that spot, eyes closed, and stayed that way. Ryan could not have said how long. Long enough that his feet went cold on the floor. Long enough that the second moon had moved a noticeable distance. Long enough that it felt wrong to count. He opened the door. She heard it and looked up. She did not startle. She had been waiting for it. He understood that now. She had been waiting for him to see. He walked to the tree in his bare feet, the soil cool and slightly damp under him, and crouched down near the spot. It looked like ordinary ground. No trace of what was below it. He looked at her. She looked back. He sat down, not crouching, not kneeling, sat fully on the ground with his back against the great root, the way you sit when you are not planning to leave soon. She watched him settle. Then she walked forward and climbed into his lap with the easy confidence of a creature who has never questioned whether she belongs there. She turned twice, pressed her nose briefly to his arm, and went still. Within a few minutes, she was asleep. Ryan sat in the dark and did not move. He was afraid to move. Not afraid of her. Afraid of breaking something he could feel the fragile edges of without being able to see its shape. Something had happened tonight, and the fact that he did not have the words for it did not make it smaller. It made it larger, actually. The things that do not fit into words have a way of filling more space. Inside the station, Ren was awake. Ryan knew this because the motion of the window blind had moved once and then gone still. Ren had looked, and then Ren had done the best thing he had ever done in the 2 years Ryan had known him. He had closed the blind and gone back to bed and told no one. Director Oren's message arrived at the 6th hour of the morning, when the first gray light was beginning. Ryan read it on his wrist unit without moving, without waking the small dragon sleeping across his legs. It said, "I received a formal communication from the Dravery Elder Council during the night. They have issued a notice of recognition. A human, you are not named in the document, but Ryan, there is only one possibility, has been entered into what they call root memory. They describe it as voluntary, irrevocable, and unprecedented with regard to non-Dravery. They are not making a request. They are informing us as a courtesy. Please come and see me when you are ready. There is no hurry." He read it twice. Solai. He had called her that in his head for weeks now. A name from a language not his own that meant held warmth. A word he had found in an old xenolinguistics file and thought suited her, shifted in her sleep. Her small tail curled around his ankle. Her breathing was slow and even and deeply satisfied. The sun came up over the Valewood and turned the top of the broad, trunked tree gold. He sat under it with a sleeping dragon and waited for the day, and tried to understand what it meant to be inside the memory of a world. He did not fully succeed, but he stopped trying after a while and just sat, which seemed like what the moment asked of him. The translator in his earpiece had been cycling softly. Near full dawn, as she began to stir, she made a sound, the low warm sound, the completed sound, the one she had always made when something was exactly right. The translator caught it for the first time, rendered it in a small flat voice into his ear. One word, remembered. He put his hand on her back and felt her breathe. Outside the station, against the old tree, in the growing light. That was enough. 6 months after the night under the tree, Ryan sat in Director Oren's office and tried to write a field report. He had tried 4 times already. The first draft ran to 3 pages of careful xenobiology language and said almost nothing. The second was shorter and still said nothing. The third he deleted before finishing. The fourth was 2 sentences. Prolonged behavioral contact with a Dravery juvenile resulted in a voluntary bonding event of apparent cultural significance. See attached documentation for full timeline. He kept the 4th one. It was honest, at least. Director Oren set a cup of water in front of him and sat down across the desk. She had aged slightly in 6 months, or maybe she had just stopped hiding it. Running a colony station during an unprecedented interspecies cultural event had a way of costing things. "I want to tell you what the council explained to me," she said. "All of it. You deserve to hear it properly." He nodded. She had spent 3 months in careful, slow communication with the Dravery Elder Council through the formal liaison channel. They had been, she described it as unexpectedly willing, as if they had already decided that this information needed to pass across the boundary and were simply waiting for someone to ask the right way. The ritual had a name, the Nephra. Translated as close as possible into the colonial language, it meant the root naming, or the name that grows. It was not a social custom. It was not a ceremony in the way humans use that word, something performed at a specific moment for a specific purpose. It was a biological and spiritual process that Dravery juveniles moved through in the first years of their life, without instruction, without anyone guiding them. A juvenile identified the presence that had shaped their earliest understanding of safety, warmth, and response. The being whose attention had first told them the world was something they could be answered by. Parents received the Nephra first, always, without exception, across all of recorded Dravery history. Until now. The object Soli had made and buried, the pale oval thing Ryan had seen in her mouth by moonlight, was called a nethric seal, a biological structure produced internally over months, encoded with the scent and sound and specific resonant presence of the named one. It was not a recording. It was more than that. Once placed in the root system of a living tree, the seal became part of the tree. The roots absorbed it. The information it carried spread through the root network beneath the veilwood, beneath the entire forest, which was older than any human civilization, and became part of what the Dravery called root memory, the memory of the world. Names stored there did not fade. They persisted for as long as the root system lived. The roots of the veilwood, the Elder Council had said, were estimated to be somewhere in the range of 9,000 years old, possibly older. Ryan was quiet for a while. "So I'm in a tree," he said. "You are in many trees," Oren said. "The root system connects them all. For 9,000 years. At minimum." He looked at his hands. They were the same hands they had always been. They did not look like the hands of someone encoded in the memory of an ancient forest. They looked like the hands of a man who had been doing field work in humid weather for 2 years and needed to do something about the calluses. "What does it mean for the colony?" he asked. Oren took a breath. "The council has designated you kin. Not an ally. Not a contact. Kin." She paused on the word as if she was still deciding how to carry it. "It carries no obligations, no diplomatic duties. It is not a position. They were very clear about that. It is simply what you are, what you will be. They consider it a factual statement about the nature of things. Can it be undone?" She looked at him. "Ryan, it's in the trees." He nodded slowly. Ren appeared in the doorway, which meant he had been listening in the hall for most of this conversation. Neither of them said anything to him about it. He came in and sat in the other chair and folded his arms. "I told you she adopted you," he said. "You did," Ryan agreed. "You owe me an apology for all the times you said it was just wildlife behavior." It was wildlife behavior. It was sacred ancient dragon ritual. Those things are not mutually exclusive. Oren made a sound that was close to a laugh and pressed her fingers to her forehead. Ryan went to the tree that evening. Soli was already there, as she often was. She had grown in 6 months. She came up past his knee now when she stood, and her amber gold scales had deepened slightly in color, richer at the edges, the way a fire gets richer when it has been burning long enough to know what it is doing. She leaned against the great root with her wings folded and watched him cross the open ground from the station. He sat down beside her. She shifted and pressed her side against his. He felt the warmth of her through his sleeve, solid and real. He thought about the 7 mornings he had filed as wildlife encounters. The stones lined on his windowsill. The sounds he had echoed without understanding. The morning he picked up the first stone, and she flew away satisfied, and he had stood there wondering what had just happened. He had not known he was answering. He had just been himself, patient because he was patient, still because stillness cost him nothing, gentle because he did not know how to be otherwise with a creature smaller than him. He had answered honestly every single time, without knowing a question was being asked, and it had been enough. Not because he had done anything remarkable, because he had done nothing false. At the far edge of the tree-line, Elder Dreth appeared. He stood at the boundary, as before, and looked at the man and the young dragon against the old tree. He did not cross into the open ground. He spoke once, in the low Dravery tongue. The translator reached Ryan's ear. "We watched your kind for 30 years. We saw your machines and your hunger for naming what you do not yet know. We did not trust you. We were not wrong. But we were not entirely right. A child trusted what we would not. And the tree agreed." He turned and went back into the veilwood. Soli did not look up. She was warm against Ryan's side and had apparently decided that elder dragons giving speeches at dusk were not her concern. She watched a small insect move across the root in front of them with much greater interest. Ryan looked at the ground where the Nethric seal was buried beneath them. He looked at the root. He looked at the tree that went up and up, higher than he could track in the fading light, into a canopy that was older than everything he had ever known. He had thought she was playing. All those mornings. The stones, the sounds, the watching. He had thought it was animal curiosity, juvenile exploration, charming and small and without consequence. She had been building, slowly, carefully, over months. She had been building a name, his name, out of the material of his presence, and she had grown it inside herself, and she had put it into the ground, and the world had accepted it. He was in the roots now. He was in the memory of this place, buried deep where the oldest things were held. Long after Ardenmore was abandoned or transformed. Long after the colony's records were lost. Long after no human alive could remember that a xenobiologist named Ryan Vale had once sat on a wooden step and waited patiently for a small amber dragon to decide whether he was worth approaching. The tree would remember. He put his hand on Solai's back. She made the warm, complete sound, the one the translator had learned to render as remembered. He did not know if she was saying it to him, or to the tree, or to the world in general. It did not matter much. He was here. She was here. The roots held them both. That was more than enough.